And the governor of New York State, Eliot Spitzer, joining us, in fact, on the Fox Business Network for the first time. Governor, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for joining us, sir.
My pleasure. It's good to be chatting with you.
Sir, you ran all over Wall Street during the financial scandals. You nailed them down. Why didn't you do anything when this housing scandal was developing, when the banks were going under, when investment firms were in such trouble? Why didn't you do anything?
Well, I'm not looking back so much as I'm looking forward, but frankly, we tried. If you were to take a look at the testimony I gave to the House Financial Services Committee this morning, the subcommittee, I suppose, you would see that we tried very diligently to stop the flow of the subprime mortgage, the explosion of subprime mortgage debt that has led and is the primary causative factor of the credit crisis we're facing today. To a great extent, we were successful in that. We were able to shut down certain of the practices that we believed were improper, but we were ourselves closed down by the OCC, the Office of the Control of the Currency, that came to the defense of the major national banks, and it said we were preempted and we could not step into that arena, that it was exclusively a federal issue and that we could not act. I was the state attorney general at the time. So we did what we could do, and we, I think, made some real progress, but clearly there is in the credit markets right now, to say they're skittish is to understate it. The crisis exploded because of a multitude of factors, the last of which is that there is just a real problem now with the bond insurance companies being too thinly capitalized.
So what do you see we should do going forward? The government, the federal government, has taken some action. What do you see? Given your druthers, what would you have done right now?
Well, the first step in an ideal world would be for private equity to step in to recapitalize the bond insurance companies. It is their credit rating itself, their AAA status, their AAA rating that then percolates through or covers and washes through the bond market.
And if they don't step in, Governor, should the government, either the state government or the federal government, step in with taxpayer money?
We are not going to, in the near term, recapitalize their companies. What we can do, and the federal government can do it more readily than the state, of course, is to impose some sort of guarantee on some of the debt. And Chairman Konjorsky, who's the chairman of the subcommittee I was testifying in front of today, raised that possibility. But I think really the next intermediate step, if there's not an infusion of equity into the bond reinsurance companies, would be a division of those, the reinsurance companies, into what we call the good bank, bad bank model, where the muni side of business, which is totally secure, and you were referring, I believe, before I came on air with you, to the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey's inability to clear the market with its auction rate securities. Those securities are rock solid. And if we peel off that part of the business, and Warren Buffett, through Berkshire Hathaway, has offered to set up a company that would buy that part of the reinsurance business, then we could restore stability, certainly to the municipal side of the business. And that is where the governments and taxpayers are suffering some significant harm right now, given the spike in the reset provisions of these auction rate securities. So that is the next step, and we'll have to see where we go from there.
Given the momentum of the movement right now, are things getting worse still? Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Are we near a bottom, or are things still getting worse?
Look, I'm certainly not in a position where I'm going to take it upon myself to say things are moving up, down, or sideways. I know that there has been an enormous amount of activity, as there should be, where my superintendent of insurance has been working very diligently, but it will be a private transaction that leads to an infusion of capital into the reinsurance companies. And so I think some of the talk that suggests that things are as dire or more, I think, overstates the magnitude of the severity of the crisis right now, because there is a possibility in the very near term that these issues can be resolved. And certainly some extraordinarily smart individuals who have responsibility in this area are working diligently towards that. The Fed, the Treasury, the New York State Superintendent of Insurance. And so there is the possibility that this can be resolved in short order.
Governor Spitzer, it's Dagan McDowell. In the long run, do the bond insurers, at least from the municipality's standpoint, do they even need to exist? Because the municipality or a state can simply just raise taxes if trouble erupts. So why wrap the securities, the bonds, in insurance at all?
Well, I think you're asking a fair question. Without you're right. Technically, one can always raise taxes to repay to make good on the legal obligation to pay down the debt. The reality is that the bond market, the municipal side of it, is rock solid because the debt coverage ratios are more than adequate. I think that the reality is that the marketplace, which has a hard time analyzing the debt offerings of many smaller villages, towns, counties, even some states, gets comfort from the fact that the bond insurers have put a rating, implicitly put their own rating behind those debt issuances services, and it makes it easier to market those securities. And it's really as much a marketing blanket of protection as anything else. And so I think for many smaller government entities, that is the real virtue, and that's what they're paying for.
All right, that is.
I'm not saying it's right or good, and I will tell you, quite frankly, the state of New York has considered and is considering whether or not it makes sense from our perspective to actually continue to pay for that insurance. But again, it's different for the state of New York than it might be for a small village whose credit rating is not as widely understood.
Yes, sir. Governor Eliot Spitzer, governor of New York. Sir, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.